Welcome to the Mindful Leadership podcast. We are here with DEEPA KANNAN. DEEPA KANNAN is a pioneer at bridging the worlds of functional medicine and Ayurveda in her healing practice. She is also an author of best-selling book, How to Sleep Better. It's a guide to achieving restful sleep and optimal well-being. Deepa's approach to health and leadership is truly holistic, and we are today really excited to dive deep into her insights today. Welcome, Deepa, to the Mindful Leadership Podcast.
Thank you, Anu. It's a pleasure to have this conversation with you.
So let's get started, Deepa. I have been reading your website and I looked at, I haven't read the book yet. I'm eager to lay my hands on it and read the book, but I've been reading what all is written about the book. And you combined the worlds of functional medicine and Ayurveda. And I know both are holistic health approaches, but why combine the two? And why was it important for you to bring these two together in your practice?
I think, Anu, that you asked me probably the question as to my entire purpose. And so it's a beautiful question. Thank you for that. And one of the things that really makes me question our modern day is the concept of polarization. And I think this polarity is visible in every subject, every field, and go on social media. Everything is about dividing, and my husband and I have these long conversations about why this is the case, and there's something deeply damaging about that polarity, which is just focused on the perspective of marketing oneself, but in reality, creating polarity between worlds. So for me, it is all about synergy and bringing worlds together. And in my small way, if I can do that in some version of whatever I'm doing, I think that's my purpose. And even today, again, just last evening, I was having this conversation with my husband that there are practitioners of Ayurveda. Of course, I know wonderfully holistic and beautiful human beings. But the truth is, we also see Ayurvedic practitioners who have fallen into this social media realm where it's about showing what is wrong in another field or putting something down. And similarly, there is the case in all facets of nutrition. For me, I started to see, because I had my foot in both worlds and I was in practitioner communities in both worlds. I was aghast one day to see Ayurveda being dissected and torn apart in a community of functional medicine, where they spoke about Ayurveda being pseudoscience and Ayurveda creating heavy metal toxicity. And there's a lot about this heavy metal toxicity, which one cannot call it out without understanding the depth of that topic. And I noticed the very same thing in some aspects of functional medicine, where it was all about research backed. And if a protocol seemed very simple, like many Ayurvedic practices, which you can follow at home, and if it didn't have the research, quote unquote, to back it up, that it was not as effective, or it was just not worth somebody's time. For me, it was about using some of the data. So even if it's basic serum labs, to understand the person's situation at the moment. So using the science, but in a way that we give the tools to the patient itself and empower them, versus making them take fear-based decisions or require invasive interventions, which of course there is a lot. The world of functional medicine has so many areas to it. Of course, there are excellent phases of just using food as medicine, but the truth is there is also one section which requires a patient to go into a clinic for invasive protocols, which can be expensive and which can take the power away from the patient, where they don't understand what is happening in their body. They are forced to rely on a functional medicine doctor giving them certain practices without explaining why they are running certain, perhaps gut testing labs, and then just telling them that they don't need to understand it at all and just that they need these practices to recover. So it didn't sit right with me. For me, it's about empowering the patient. So I wanted to take the best. And you said it rightly at the beginning, Anu, that both worlds are holistic in the sense that they do look at the interconnection of all systems, all organs. So there is something great in both worlds. For example, looking at a basic blood marker, but from a functional medicine lens, and telling the patient what that is revealing about their body, so that they are coming from a space of understanding versus lack of understanding, and giving them protocols which they perhaps don't need to go to an Ayurvedic center. Maybe not all of us can go away for 4 to 6 weeks every now and then. There are mothers of little children who can't do that. I myself was in that situation when my health needed it very badly. So maybe we give them protocols that they can do from the comfort of their own homes. And then we can show them the data again, that post bringing in these simple protocols in the comfort of their own home, we can use the data of the labs to again show them that these simple protocols can be extremely effective in rebalancing their body. And East and West need not be polarized. East and West must be brought together in synergy.
They can meet, isn't it? And they are meeting. And in the way I'm understanding is that, let's say that there's somebody who comes with a condition, you doing the functional medicine tests, and extensive blood work to figure out the markers. And then based on then when you create an approach, the approach now could consist of both Ayurveda and functional medicine as modalities to help the patient with that condition. Would it be that?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And trying to minimize the onslaught. Another example to highlight this would be, typically functional medicine is known for giving people too many supplements. So at times a practitioner could give as many as 25 or 30 to a person. And an Ayurveda would be aghast by that concept, that how is this onslaught on Agni, that it's just damaging Agni completely. So for me, it's about how do you balance that person's Agni, but at the same time, you don't ignore the deficiencies. So could you just pick one or two which are extremely important, which can support in the healing process, but not destroy Agni in the process of trying? You can bring in the greatest of data about a nutrient and prove that it has such wonderful benefits. And the truth is, some of these high quality micronutrients are not economical by any means. So for a lot of people, when you add up 30 high quality supplements, it can be as expensive as their monthly earning. And that's not a practical way. We want to get them to a space where they're empowered, not where it's putting a further burden on whatever they're doing. So I think it's important to take the best in a way that it can work for each person, based upon their capability of every kind. Are they capable to support that journey financially with their time? How much time can they devote to themselves on any given day? for self-care practices, what's the kind of food that they've grown up eating. We can't be pulling them away from food that they've grown up eating and say take a completely opposite tangent, because that's just not sustainable practices. They might do it under your watchful eye, and then eventually they're going to throw it out and go back to the state that they were in.
Yeah. And as you were saying that, you also talked about the fact that both of these modalities are preventative in nature, but then there are times when people need something more invasive. Now it's time has come to, they can't manage it at home, but there are still enough opportunity for us to be in charge of our own health. And unfortunately, people have delegated that responsibility of their own health to the practitioners completely. And that too, in the moments of crisis, when things go wrong, we can go to urgent care. If they become worse, we can go to ER. Maybe we do get some tests done often. But how about the holistic well-being? So how do you, for example, approach somebody when they come to you about to maintain their health, to get well by themselves?
I mean, that's exactly what I do, Anu. So, based upon whatever is happening with them at the moment, my job is to, over the 8 months that they work with me, equip them with the skills. And most often, probably it's bad business or bad marketing, but I give them all the information to understand their labs, to understand why they're taking something, so much so that they never need to come back to me. And I know this is an opposite approach to a lot of practitioners, because I do see colleagues of mine who've attended conferences where the jargon is made so highly technical that even MDs can't understand what a functional medicine practitioner is talking about. And maybe this is an attempt to hold on to the knowledge and maintain the reign of power in a way, but I think that is not healthcare, and we need to be outsourcing that to the patient. So anything that makes you feel dumb, anything that makes you feel like you're not good enough physically, mentally, and you're never going to succeed without that protocol, is something that is quite an alarming trend. And anything that tells the patient that you have everything inside of yourself to heal yourself, and you are fully capable of making this journey, is what should be our job. So that is what I attempt to do by using some of the principles of functional medicine to assess their labs and to create a sort of a blueprint of their body constitution, so that they can understand maybe some of those imbalances are not yet even visible as symptoms to them, but making them understand that what are the imbalances both from a science perspective and from an Eastern ancient wisdom perspective, and then showing them, offering them the tools to teach them how to regain that even keel, not just at that moment, but at any given moment in time. So they should be able to understand anytime they are off balance and regain even keel by utilizing tools by themselves.
Yeah, and within that is sleep, isn't it? One of the biggest keys
Yes.
to health and living well is sleep. And in fact, it's considered as one of the foundations in Ayurveda. Sleep is difficult to come for the modern, modern corporate worker, at least. I hear that from a lot of my corporate clients. I do executive coaching, and stress and anxiety has become really common at workplace. In fact, there was this starking news which came out from the consul, the Surgeon General of US, Dr. Vivek Murthy, in May of 2023, that US is suffering from an epidemic of isolation, and it's causing national health crisis. So anxiety, stress, isolation, and then of course it leads to depression. All those things are becoming quite common. And of course, then sleep is affected. Lot of money is being spent in sleep medication. Hmm. You talk about sleep in a completely different way. So I want you to just touch on that because you've written a bestseller on sleep, and sleep is an area of passion for you. So wanted to get into that and say, why do you consider sleep as so important? And what do you see when you hear about the symptoms of what's going on today in the workforce in US?
Beautiful, Anu, and there's so many nuances to that. But I think first, before we get into why sleep and why did I approach sleep, you said something very pertinent about the stress and anxiety peaking and the isolation that was happening. Now, a lot of people think that isolation was COVID related. Yes, to a large extent, because of being isolated physically, there were peaks in depression, anxiety, and stress. However, isolation is not just when we are physically isolated from somebody. Today's world, every moment in time, people are made to feel isolated by social media, which has this subliminal message that you're not good enough. And this is permeating every content out there, where if you go onto social media, every moment people are made to feel that they are not good enough. And I'm not talking just about somebody who already has anxiety, even practitioners, and we talk about nepotism in corporate society or in any professional setup, but there is a form of nepotism even in social media, that power game and the belief that somebody who has a large following is automatically qualified to give you the advice is something that everybody is believing. So we do see a lot of influencers with large following who have recently been in the news for passing away themselves due to poor habits, and we are not raising enough attention for these alarming aspects of social media. So I think we need to go differentiating the message with the messenger, that just because somebody has a 1 million following or a 500,000 following doesn't mean that everything that they're saying is the ultimate truth about whatever they're speaking about. So I think it's really important we separate the message from the messenger, especially when there's large following. We need to question, is what they're saying true? Because if we are watching influencers die about just not having enough food, and then you're seeing these large accounts focusing on telling people to just live on raw juices, I think it's really, really dangerous. So that's one. So isolation can come even while we are immersed in society. And all of us, it's not just somebody who's perhaps going through challenges. Every one of us is made to feel that we are not good enough. And I think you asked me about sleep. Why sleep? You said something about Ayurveda prioritizing sleep. However, for me, the beauty was that functional medicine also has this trifecta for healing, which is sleep, poop, and blood sugar balance. And Ayurveda had ahar, nidra, brahmacharya, which is food, brahmacharya, or how you manage the sexual energy, and sleep. So the common denominator in both worlds was nidra or sleep. And therefore, I wanted to explore that. And of course, I think sleep physicians, sleep research has focused a lot on just one aspect of sleep treatment, which is CBTI, or cognitive behavioral therapy for insomnia. And I did notice a lot of CBTI practitioners speaking about how anything in the physiology doesn't matter at all, and you have to just use these techniques to retrain your mind. And for me, that is not an approach at all, and I'm grown up with where you come across verses in the Bhagavad Gita talking about how when there's chaos in the mind, even the body can be still, but if there's chaos in the mind, you can't do anything, and vice versa. So you need to, it's impossible to have stillness when there's chaos in the body as well. And therefore, how do we look at that chaos in the body? And everybody's chaos that's disrupting their sleep is going to be unique. It's not as simple as saying that these are the root causes of sleep. So we have to find a framework that can tell somebody how they can understand what is disrupting their sleep. And yes, as you rightly pointed out, anxiety is a big part of that sleep puzzle, and sleep and anxiety are really like two sides of a coin. From an Ayurvedic perspective, that's clearly visible because both of those are caused by high Vata dosha. And if we were to look at Vata dosha from a scientific perspective, and we're saying excess Vata, we can correlate it to what is a sympathetic dominant nervous system being perpetually in fight or flight, freeze, not being able to shift to a parasympathetic state to calm down. So both anxiety and sleep really do have that very similar underlying root cause. So if we were to have anxiety, eventually we may have sleep challenges. Then if we have persistent sleep challenges, eventually we might find ourselves being labeled as having anxiety. And the answer is not just being put on anti-anxiety medication, which is also very rampant everywhere, but to rebalance the entire body as a whole.
So some things from your book that you can bring to our listeners today and see where would they get started? Let's say that somebody is, suffering from what they call insomnia or just finding it really, really hard to sleep. Where do they begin?
I think also, I know this question does require personalization to some extent, because obviously telling everyone shut off your phone at 5 p.m. may not happen. But I would start by saying, whatever is your workday, find one regular shut off time and don't vary that day to day. If it's for you 7 p.m., that you switch off your phone and computer, stick to that time. Don't allow anybody to push that boundary. So whatever that might be realistic to you, for me, it's 5 p.m. to 5 a.m. switch off. For somebody else, it might be different. But I think overall, if you were to ask me for maybe 3 top ways somebody who perhaps is not yet fully intertwined in a world of health would like to begin with, the first would be to move away from the raw food diet and start eating cooked food. I think that's a big one, and I'm making more of my mission to talk about this because, as you might have noticed, all over social media, the predominant recommendation is to go on raw food diets. And I have seen repeatedly practitioners themselves being diagnosed with chronic conditions, which in my head has been caused by the raw food diet, but it's hard to speak about these things. But for example, when we keep eating those cold raw foods and we're killing Agni, we're raising Vata dosha. So we can get diagnosed with conditions like anxiety, osteoporosis, osteoarthritis. So there are so many conditions related to that. So I would say that's simple to do, but it's extremely powerful because it just starts changing the environment of the gut. And when we change that environment, our microbiome flourishes, yes, without needing microbiome testing, without needing specific probiotics. I mean, it seems counterintuitive to be doing complex gut testing and telling somebody they have a particular pathogenic bacteria that is causing their depression or anxiety, and then giving them raw food shakes and then putting them on 5 different digestive supplements. It's just, I mean, for me, it's like, why are people not seeing this missing link? If you need 5 6 digestive supplements, then whatever diet you've been put on is clearly not working for you, because your body should be able to produce those enzymes that are required to break down the food and nourish you appropriately. So if you ask me, number one, I would say just start cooking all your food and stop eating raw foods. Number two, I would say my most favorite practice, which I have a master class on as well, which is the ancient Abhyanga practice. So just learning to do self massage, not that you go away. Yes, you can absolutely go away for a full treatment, but that's not something that you do every day. So learning to do it for yourself every day, which balances the nervous system, it helps to lower cortisol. That is a powerful practice, and I think most often anybody with sleep challenges benefits from bringing in Abhyanga at least a few times a week by themselves. And finally, if you were to just ask me for a third tip for people who are just maybe not looking at unique sleep challenges, I would say really focus on testing vitamin D levels. And if your vitamin D levels are low, I mean, really, as optimal levels, we want it to be around 60. But if they are low, not to take the high dose vitamin D supplement, which is generally recommended as 60,000 sachets. And the liver cannot handle that high dose. I know practitioners who give people that high dose every day for a few days in an attempt to clear a viral, when in fact during a virus you need to take the load away from Agni. So when you give a low dose vitamin D, rather than the liver getting congested as it does with high dose vitamin D, a low dose vitamin D gives the code to the gut microbiome to produce B vitamins or synthesize them in the gut microbiome. And the B vitamins produce something called acetylcholine, which turns on the parasympathetic nervous system. And therefore, without us realizing, we suddenly find we are able to calm down.
Mm, That's so brilliant. And somehow, I mean, I myself have been at some point in my blood test had really low vitamin D numbers, and I remember taking really huge, huge dose of that, and never thought twice of what it would be causing to my liver, but it does make sense. So, uh,
Well, usually, I know anybody who has serious liver challenges, they will know right away, because if the night after they take that dose, they are up and about and not sleeping and extremely disturbed in body and mind, you can immediately know that the liver is overloaded and it's not been able to process that high dose.
There's something beautiful you mentioned, and I want to dig a little bit deeper, that if they will know it in their body. And I think part of all what you're talking about is also tuning into yourself, becoming more aware of what's happening in your body. And large part of my work life was in working in the technology company. Before that, I worked in an aerospace company. And so it was very brain and mind intensive work, where you can almost get disconnected from your body.
True.
Always say this, that for most part of my work life, I stayed a few inches away from my body. And then
True. I
when,
think the pertinent point.
yeah, and when I got into this holistic sciences of Ayurveda, and then also into coaching, I recognized that how much of our whole life experience is somatic experience. Right? This is the place actually we need to pay the most attention to. And you were mentioning that, you would notice it in your body, but somehow we also stay very connected from noticing that. So I wanted you to touch on that. How do we become just more aware of that, noticing things in our body? What are some of the tips you'd give for people to get more connected to their own selves, so that they can become their own healers?
Yeah, beautiful. And I think you used the right word, somatic, because today there's so much somatic healing techniques used, especially in the concept of anxiety and mental health challenges, that bringing our attention to our body is highly intuitive practice. And as I said before, the job, I think, of every practitioner should be about teaching the person to know how to get intuitive with their body. Like, how can we make the patient aware? So usually when somebody works with me, over 8 months, I'm training them to do this via different tools. But overall, I think that all of us just need to start paying attention. And that even if we were to just track on our own every week, one day a week, where we write down in one side all the food we've eaten, breakfast, lunch, dinner, and any snacks. Sometimes just seeing, are we eating snacks here and there, seeing it on paper itself changes things. And then just writing down on the right all that we see in our body and our mind. So usually when I tell people to fill out what's called food, mood, poop, but I tell them the food and mood, the mood is not just I'm happy, I was sad, I was angry, I was depressed, I was anxious, but it's also I had a back pain, I felt less energy, I felt more energy, I had a headache, I felt happy today, I felt more motivated. So even if we take just two columns, food and mood of physical and emotional, and just do once a week where we write down, we'll be able to connect the dots. Let's say we have lunch which has zero protein and just a lot of starch, and then we see at 4 p.m. I felt so tired. We can connect the dots like little kids doing puzzles. And it's so easy to make the connections when you see it in front of you. So I tell everybody, I'm asking you to fill this out for 8 months, not for me to look at this as if I'm a teacher correcting an examination paper, but for it to become a habit for you, that eventually without filling that paper, you'll be able to connect the dots of what's going on. So let's say you put down high dose vitamin D in the morning, and then you see that night did not sleep at all or woke up 5-6 times. We can easily connect the dots to reveal that it's done something to us. So if we put it on paper, it's very easy to watch. And just look in terms of, it's not normal to have dips in energy. So if somebody says every day at 2 p.m. I feel all my energy, that's when I need a coffee. Now that's not telling you need a coffee. That's telling you why is your energy dipping at that point. Maybe your lunch is not optimal enough to give you. If you wake up in the morning, you should be able to eat breakfast and have energy to be active right through the day. Your mood should be stable through the day. If you're doing everything right, your body as energy will be stable, and your mind's emotions and mood will also be stable pretty much right through the day, which will then result in you falling asleep and staying asleep.
Such a great tool. I really appreciate, Deepa, the tool you have talked about is so practical. You track yourself, follow yourself for a day. You write down what's happening with the body, with not just the body, but also the emotion and the sensation, physical and the mental emotion, and then be able to track it back to what could be the cause, doing the gap analysis there. Wow, that's a great tool. as you were talking about this, I was thinking of Seattle, where I live, is an area where, you know, sun is not there. It's very cloudy and rain, and sun is not out every single day, or it's out but it's covered. And I've always felt, being born in the tropical weather, that I like, oh, it's the sun, not being able to see the sun. That is what's dipping me down. Do you see, is there a connection? Is the solar energy so important for our well-being? And how do we compensate for that if it is?
That's some beautiful question. And of course, Ayurveda had the code for this thousands of years ago, that as is in the cosmos is within us. So while I would say, yes, sunlight is important, I think there's been a bit of a misunderstanding in how this is approached in perhaps modern sleep space or mental health, where they're only looking at sunlight is not there, so therefore we have to give somebody a light box, we need to bring them artificial light to reset their rhythms. But that is a flawed approach, because it's not taking into account what do we do if this is the case forever. Are we going to rely on light boxes forever? No. So we have to understand that the warmth outside is missing for people who are living in these cold locations. And if they cannot change that, how do we bring the warmth into their life? How do we bring sunshine into their life? Now, it is evident that, and this might make it more easy to understand, that there's a saying in Ayurveda, on days of solar eclipse nobody should eat, you fast until the eclipse is over, because when the sun is occluded, that Agni is occluded, so anything you eat during that window will not be able to be digested, and it will form what's called ama or toxins, so therefore you don't eat. Now, so this is, you're describing a area which is almost like always in a solar eclipse. So we have to think in terms of the sun is occluded. So how do we bring that sun into our life every day? So we do it by not having cold baths. We definitely don't want to fall into the trap of what everybody's talking about, the ice baths. And I'm definitely concerned that I see practitioners who are clearly high pitta doshas talking about how effective the ice bath was for them. And I'm tempted to share it, saying it was effective for them because they're clearly high pitta. But if they recommend that to somebody who's high vata, they're going to push them, tip it over into anxiety and insomnia. So we bring that sunshine through warming abhyanga oils, warm baths, and wearing warm color clothing, so that we feel the sunshines around us. We definitely do not have raw foods, cold foods, the raw chilled smoothies with frozen berries and raw greens. We want to have warm soups and cooked food, and bring in that warmth, even if necessary, with warming teas such as hot water with a pinch of dry ginger powder. But again, these are recommendations to be a bit cautious about, because you don't know each person's body constitution. But if they're overall feeling cold, cold hands, cold feet, not able to feel comfortable with that cold at all, then for sure it will work for them, where they take ginger tea. And I think hot ginger tea works for everybody. So if it's not dry ginger, no matter the constitution, a little bit of ginger tea works for everybody. So just creating that warmth in all possible ways, and not just thinking that we fix it with one light box, or
Mm,
it's not an answer like that. We have to see how do we bring this sun into our body and our mind.
mm. Beautiful. I can see that. I have even felt it when I've changed my clothing to wear bright clothes, and the food I'm eating. So, of course, bringing all those things is making so much sense. So we coming towards the end of our interview today, and I wanted to ask you is what do you want to leave our viewers with? What are some of the things I haven't asked about and you would love to share with the listeners and viewers?
I think if you ask me that, Anu, I would say that there's a lot of information out there. And especially if your audience is somebody who is busy, who's a busy corporate professional, doesn't have a whole load of time to do things, maybe the top recommendation I feel, and I see this over and over again, that there are people who are doing great interventions with food and nutrients and practices, but they're still not getting the results because of this one practice, which is the inability to control the social scrolling. Now, if you were to watch your finger when you're moving the screen in Instagram, the faster your fingers moving, the more vata imbalanced you are. Because if your vata is calm, your nervous system is calm, you would feel uncomfortable to scroll really fast. So if you're scrolling on social media, watch and just observe yourself. If your hands are moving rapid finger and just moving post to post so quickly, that's a clear sign there's a level of vata imbalance. So it doesn't change overnight. As I said, it does help to do abhyanga and give yourself some switch off time. If there are mental health hospitals which are now creating de-addiction wings for phone usage for adults, our children are really in a dangerous space because their education is largely on the screen. And if we cannot control ourselves, how are our children going to control? So I think it takes a lot of intentional practice to regulate that time you're on social media. For sure, I see a difference on Friday, Saturday, Sunday. When I've switched off from Instagram, I can feel immediately everything calming down in my mind. And when Monday to Thursday I'm posting, even though I'm so regulated, by Thursday I can feel I don't feel as stable. So I think it's very important to be start there. Even if you begin there and regulate that, you will find that the power of shifting and calming down your nervous system is way more powerful than the most expensive supplement and the greatest change in food habits. And you will help yourself heal your body and your mind just from calming down the nervous system.
It's such a beautiful invitation and it's free. It doesn't
Yes.
doesn't cost us to do anything, right?
Yes.
There's no cost involved, but just it does involve discipline. It does involve putting the phone down. It does involve sticking with what you choose to do day after day after day after day so that it becomes a new habit. Um, so I really want to thank you, Deepa, for being here with us today. It's been just such a beautiful conversation, and the nuggets we got from you, they are precious. They are precious in moving every individual towards their own healing, because the healer is within us. The capacity to bring ourselves to become alive day to day in living life to our fullest potential is within us, and Deepa is asking us to do that, and I hope we will all commit to that journey of healing. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Anu. It was a wonderful conversation, and you're a great host.
Thank you. Thanks so much.